Hello, everyone, and welcome. Happy New Year, and welcome to the first new webinar in the 2020 year of Rallyware webinar series. And this is Rich Schukagel talking to you from the Rallyware team. And it's my pleasure today to be able to actually introduce a guest speaker for our webinar series today. Any of you who've been around the direct selling industry are very familiar with an icon of the industry, John Fleming. And John is going to be our presenter today. So John has owned his own direct selling company. He served as an officer in one of the world's largest direct selling companies. But today, John is known as a student, researcher, writer, speaker, advocate of the direct selling channel of distribution. He does have many accolades, including the Direct Selling Association Hall of Fame, the Direct Selling Education Foundation Circle of Honor, and Direct Selling News Lifetime Achiever. But John, personally, when you were editor-in-chief at Direct Selling News, one of my favorite aspects every month was the personal letter that you penned at the beginning of each issue. You always highlighted new information, ideas, while at the same time causing me to think about concepts from a completely different perspective. I know that's what you have in store for all of us today within your presentation. So welcome. Thank you again for sharing your knowledge, your research, and what you've uncovered in the last few months and years. And we look forward to listening and learning from you today. Before I let you get started, I want to remind all of our attendees that right now you are in listen-only mode, but you have the ability, as John goes through his presentation, to be able to enter questions. So I would ask you to do that as he is presenting. We will address those questions at the end of the presentation. And so if you will join me in welcoming John Fleming to the stage, to the microphone. John, thanks again so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Rich, and it's really a pleasure to work with Rallyware on this message and to share something that we think is very important to the audiences that you attract. So thank you for the compliments. Those were very fond days when I was filling that role as publisher, editor-in-chief for Direct Selling News, and you mentioned something that was always very exciting to me, and that was to take a few minutes and just pen some thoughts relative to what was going on within our group of direct selling companies and the direct selling community at large. So it was a fun period of time in my life to do that, and I appreciate the fact that you mentioned that it had also meant so much to you. So good morning to some of you, good afternoon to others, and congratulations on taking some time out of your busy schedule to tune in to this message about the gig economy that is brought to you by Rallyware. And this is a subject that I became very interested in a couple of years ago. And there are some good reasons for being interested. And I think you're going to find there are some good reasons for you to also be paying attention to what's happening. We have quite a few slides to go through, and I'm going to move through some quicker than others. I think that you may want to take notes. And if you're in groups, that's great too. I think you should be able to see the slides well enough on the screen. But I would also say, don't worry so much about taking the notes. Just kind of listen to the message that I'm going to share, because at the end, we will share with you how you might get a copy of this presentation if you would like to have one. And Rallyware is also going to come back and introduce another new way of accessing this information. So let's have an exciting time, and I'm going to go to the next slide and just give you an overview of what we call the Ultimate Gig Project. Now, it is a research project, and I consider myself a direct seller. even though I haven't been actively involved in a direct selling company for quite a few years. But I stay tuned, and I still do research. I do a lot of writing. I do selective consulting. And it's a channel of distribution that I truly believe is one of the more significant channels in the world. And there are many reasons for that. And a few years ago, I started to watch this phenomena that we call gig economy. It's growing like crazy. It's attracting a lot of people to part-time work. And some of the key attributes of the gig economy are flexibility, freedom, and fair rewards for time invested. Well, when I think about the historical perspective of the direct selling channel, that's exactly what we built this channel on: flexibility, freedom, and fair rewards for time invested. So this is a formal research project. We have already published one particular item that we'll talk about a little bit later, and there's more to come. But let's get into the meat of the conversation. Most people are talking about gig economy, hearing about it, or wondering about it. So many times when gig economy comes up as a label, people are talking about the sharing economy, the peer economy. It may be called the on-demand economy, platform economy, networked economy, bottom-up economy. If you weren't confused, you're probably a bit confused now. But I'm going to keep going. It's also called the access economy, the rental economy. There are transportation gigs that we're familiar with, and most of us probably have used a Uber, or Lyft, or some other transportation gig. And then we have selling gigs, and the choices are enormous. We estimate that there may be over 100 million, not 100 million, I'm sorry, 1 million different products and services that might be sold through some type of gig work. So that's a little bit of background. Here's what's happening in terms of impact. There are 57 million Americans involved that are already contributing about 1.4 trillion to the US economy. And that's a correct number, 1.4 trillion. This is a huge phenomenon. That's why we call it a phenomenon. 40% of the US workforce is currently involved. This stat comes from the US Department of Labor. And within a few years, we expect that stat to be over 50% of the current labor force involved in part-time work. Now, here's some qualitative stats. And depending upon whose research you're looking at, up to 80% of the existing labor force could be interested in part-time work. And this phenomenon is growing at a nice rate of 8.1% or better per year. And these are very important stats to be aware of. Now, there's some rationale for this. And these stats that I'm going to cover very briefly have everything to do with why people are so interested in part-time work. Well, you're looking at a graph, and that graph shows that 40 years ago, hourly wages were about $2.50 per hour. And 40 years later, they have grown to 20.27, now 22.65 at the end of 2018. But over that period of time, as wages have increased significantly, and I understand that people listening to a webinar like this may not be interested in hourly wages. But when you look at this, it tells a story. The purchasing power of those dollars has not changed dramatically in 40 years. Why? Inflation has negated the purchasing power. So in other words, the house that cost $135,000 40 years ago now costs $270,000. If I were to give you the average stats on savings accounts, you would be quite surprised. Depending upon which segment you are in, between 25 and 55, the average is going to be somewhere around $4,000. From our point of view, not enough. So this is driving more and more people than ever before to looking at the possibility of part-time work, and that's fueling the gig economy. So what are companies doing? Companies are realizing that part-time work is attractive, that people are interested in their freedom, in their flexibility. HR professionals recognized this years ago as people started to ask more about flex time, not full time, working 9 to 2, not 9 to 5, working 9 to 2, maybe 3 days a week, the balance of the hours being worked from home. So this is a phenomena that's on the rise, and it is fueling the interest in part-time work. And this slide kind of refers to it as being a group of contingent workers. Well, of all companies, we're not talking about direct selling companies, 51% are significantly increasing their contingent worker workforce, and 44% are going to be increasing their use of independent contractors in particular. That's a total of 51% of the labor force. And then you see the other bar graphs there as to how companies are expected to participate. Now, we're not just talking about direct selling companies, as I mentioned. We're talking about traditional companies. We're talking about any company or brand that you want to name. So gigging is on the rise, and there are some very significant reasons for this. Now, this slide is showing you two different things. On the left side, we see a bar graph, and we're just showing you what people are most interested in when they are looking for a gig. And you see it right at the top, 96% are looking for flexible hours, no question about it. And then you see some of the other rationale that falls into place. Number two is control over earnings. So that's 40%. And then 39% are also registering in saying that they want to work, but they want to have more personal time and they want to have less stress. Sounds to me like a direct selling opportunity, but we're talking about the overall gig economy at the moment. Now, the chart on the right is very interesting because we just took a look at 9 of the top gig companies, and this list could be, well over 100, 200. There's so many out there right now. But if we take a look at some of the familiar brands, Airbnb, TaskRabbit, Lyft, Uber, DoorDash, Postmates, Etsy, GetAround, and you take a look at that column that says average per month. Now, this is also a very important chart to take a look at. The average earnings coming from a participant in Airbnb is $924 per month. Now, that's average. That means people are earning more and people are earning less. Lyft, $377. Uber, $364. The gig economy is not positioned to enable people to switch careers or march on a new and different career path immediately. They are satisfying a basic need, flexibility in how the work is done, and control over how one is able to earn from the work that is actually done. You look at the bottom of that chart, overall, the average person participating in the gig economy is earning about $299 a month. Now, this is a very important stat for those of us that are advocates of direct selling in particular. You don't see a career income average here. So we're not talking about lifestyle changing dramatically. We're not talking about Lamborghinis and achievements like that. We're talking about meeting basic needs, and $300 a month can in fact be life-changing. So let's keep going. And look at the breakdown between men and women. Now, I happen to believe this is very important, and I'm going to show you why on another slide. But at this moment in time, about 60% of the participants in a gig economy, 69% are men, and 31% are women. Now, that's a little bit different than what we see on the direct selling side. But the gig phenomena is very new. And the transportation gigs have been very popular, and women in particular may not be interested in driving cars, carrying people around. So let's continue to take a look at this. And lo and behold, in our research, we found that Hyperwallet, a supplier to many direct selling companies, had started to look into women in the gig economy, and they actually made a prediction that the future gigs will be women as more choices become available and as women begin to realize that flexibility and freedom are just so important in the lives that they live. Now, the Hyperwallet study, which is a valid statistical study, they surveyed over 2,000 women, so that makes it very valid. And what they found is that already 43% of the women involved are engaging in some type of professional freelance work. So if you know how to do something, be it writing, be it helping a company from your home base versus being actually there, regardless of what the task, the role, or the responsibility might be, this is a possibility in today's world. So 43% of the women involved that were surveyed are involved that way. But lo and behold, 32% are selecting direct selling right now. That's almost 1/3. And then 30% are involved in some type of service platform such as TaskRabbit, Uber, etc. So let's look at the earnings. How much money is being earned by the women who are participating? And again, you're going to realize how important this is. 62% less than $10,000 a year, 20% greater than $10,000 per year, but less than $20,000 per year. So if I take the 62 and the 20, 82% of the women involved are earning less than $20,000 per year, and 62% are earning less than $10,000 per year. There's a reason why I'm bringing this to your attention. Now, women are important in terms of gig work because maybe it's a natural, and what we found through this Hyperwallet study is that 86% of female gig workers believe gig work offers the opportunity to make equal pay to their male counterparts. So gender equality, which is a big thing in the workplace, does not seem to be an issue here. 68% of female gig workers say their friends or family view gig work as a great career path. 68% of female gig workers say they have friends working in the gig economy. When we start talking about referrals and the power of personal conversation, these stats are very, very important, especially if we are looking to grow a company that's utilizing some form of gig work as its primary channel of distribution. I'm going to keep moving. So there are some key questions that our team is beginning to identify. And because most of us came out of the direct selling industry, even though we have a lot of academics that will be involved in grad students as well, we feel that these three questions are very important for direct sellers to address. Can direct selling opportunities be the ultimate gig? We actually believe that the answer to this is yes, but we're going to continue to do the research and prove this if it's true. We would like to believe that it is true. Are we identifying our channel of distribution effectively? That causes us to think about how we describe ourselves and what we are taking into the marketplace, because the marketplace is very different than the way it was. Are we leveraging the growth and acceptance of the gig economy? So these are three key questions. Now, these stats are available to anyone interested in direct sales. The U.S. Direct Selling Association has a website. Globally, we have the World Federation of Direct Selling Companies. So you can go and take a look at these stats yourself. But when we started to take a look at what was going on, we noticed that since 2015, the growth of direct selling domestically started to slide. And in 18, we reported slight growth of 1.3% over 17. But we've been sliding since 2015. When we look at the makeup, and if you didn't remember the stats, a lot of people involved in the gig economy, when it comes to direct selling, 1 million involved full-time, 5.2 million involved part-time. And then we have a lot of discount buyers and we have preferred customers. And when we add those two numbers up, we have about 36 million customers. And when we add up full-time and part-time, we have about 6 million independent contractors. If we're into ratios of customers per independent contractor, that's about 6. One could easily say that's not enough. That if we are looking at opportunity, increasing that average would have a lot to do with looking at a much brighter future, bigger, better than ever before. So now we take another cut on the stats and facts. And what I want you to take a look at is not so much the breakup by ethnicity or age group. You can see 25 to 55 is basically the participation in terms of age. But right now, the direct selling channel reflects and has continuously reflected the stat, 75% women, 25% men. Almost the opposite of what the gig economy is at the moment. But this is one of the reasons why we believe that the future of the gig economy is going to be so inclusive of women in particular. So here are the global direct selling stats and facts. And if you look at 2015, we grew about 7.5% over prior year. We had a compound annual growth rate of about 6.9. Topping 183 billion in retail sales. Then we started to slide in 16, we started to slide in 17, and 18 we slid a bit more, and in 19 we are predicting that that number is going to be about the same as it was in 18, perhaps down a bit more. So this is another reason why we're paying so much attention to the gig economy. And then if we look at companies that are definitely classified as being in the gig economy, Amazon, 2018 revenue, 233 billion. That's more than all direct selling companies combined around the world. So should we pay attention? We think we should. And the company was founded in 1994, was under the radar until about 2004. And if you look all the way to the right, this is a surprising stat to most, and depending upon whose research, this number might vary a bit, but Amazon has up to 2 million affiliates. Now, affiliates are independent contractors that work in their own way from their homes or wherever they want to work from, who drive people to Amazon websites. So Amazon is utilizing a force of independent contractors, and they are called affiliates. Uber is using about 750,000 independent contractors. Etsy is a global mall. Everything that you buy through Etsy is created by an independent contractor who uses Etsy as a platform. And then in our research, we found this other service that simply helps people to market what they have using digital online tools, and they claim to have a subscriber base of 1,400,000 independent contractors. So the gig economy and those companies that are utilizing and leveraging e-commerce platforms are becoming very, very significant in the marketplace. So when we look at those stats and facts, can we think about what was shared with direct selling? we say direct selling is at an inflection point. And that means that we're at that moment in time when we are beginning to look very carefully at who we are and who we want to be. And companies are going through adjustments, they're going through repositioning. There are many companies now that are making slight adjustments to compensation plans. So we are going through a period of change, and that is to be expected, and we're not the first industry to go through an inflection point. Now, the good news is when you come out, the business grows and it becomes stronger, bigger, better than ever before, or businesses that may not pay close enough attention would in fact continue to decline. We don't want to be on that side of the curve. Now, this is real, and this to me is one of the most important slides in this presentation, because most of us listening to a message like this have been around long enough to maybe have remembered film. And Kodak was the market leader. And when film was popular and we had to develop the film before we could see the prints, Kodak was doing about 16 billion. Their stock price was right around $90. And they definitely had close to 80% market share. Now, all of a sudden, something comes along, such as a scan disc, and all of the work that went into capturing pictures on film is all of a sudden now captured on a scan disc. And Kodak is living through this. And then we also have the introduction of the smartphone that has a camera built into it, and you can see the clarity of that picture, and that picture is available to you instantaneously. Now, what happened to Kodak? In 2018, Kodak reported 1.3 billion in revenues versus 16, and their share price had dropped from $90 to $250. Why do we have this slide in? It's very important to pay attention to the fact that we are in this inflection point, and change is real, disruption is real, and we want to take advantage of the best of learning that is available to us. So we just capture a basic SWOT analysis here for your information. And when we look at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, we don't use the T for threats. We use the T for the future. But when it comes to strengths, everything that we see and everything that we are researching points to, number one, relationships being a strong attribute of the direct selling channel. Now, with the weaknesses, what we are beginning to see as we step back and take a look at how our companies have positioned our products and our messages. Maybe we become a little bit too complicated in our language, certainly a little bit too complicated maybe in our behaviors. And if you've been paying attention over the past couple of years, regulatory has all of a sudden become present. And when regulatory begins to take a position, it should not lead to fear, but from this perspective, from a research perspective, it looks like fear has crept into the mindset in many cases, and we don't want that fear to be there. So when we look now at opportunities, simplicity seems to be an opportunity. Delivering on a realistic promise seems to be an opportunity. Not so much new careers or new career paths as much as let's show people how to earn $500 to $1,500 per month. Now, if you remember the slide when I showed you the average being earned from gig participation, it was only about $300 per month. And obviously, our business model is just begging us to have a real focus on real customer acquisition. That's going to lead to new metrics, new transparency, and possibly new ways to recognize the people who engage a direct selling business and actually do the work. So what does the future look like? It looks like there's a big opportunity to identify what's happening in the gig economy while distinguishing ourselves very clearly. We see unparalleled business building and personal development guidance becoming a tremendous asset. And we're using technology now. Maybe we got a bit behind, but we are beginning to see the picture that that smartphone is a game changer. And everything comes back to whether or not we can use that phone to access the information that we desire. So we feel that technology is the game changer. And as direct selling companies begin to incorporate the use of technology in conjunction with the power of relationships, we have something that begins to look very attractive. So looking ahead, what do we see? Maximizing our opportunities probably requires us to maybe think differently, maybe define ourselves a bit differently, position ourselves a bit differently, speak a more effective language that resonates with this new marketplace that's definitely interested in part-time work, not necessarily the new career path. And if we think about those things, perhaps we will come out of this embracing more concepts of less is more. So that's a term that I have been fond of for most of my life. I come out of the architectural world, and I happened to work for an architect at one time who believed that the structure of a building would always serve its people more effectively if we were to focus on less is more. I think it might be very appropriate to where we are. And with that, I am going to, first of all, share with you where you can get good information on the gig economy. This is a publication that we introduced back in June. It's still available. It is a quick read, a very good read. And if you and your teams are looking at better understanding the gig economy, there are not too many places you can go other than to Google various websites. You might want to go right here. And these publications can be purchased in small quantity or large quantity. And our website is ultimategigbook.com, ultimategigbook.com. And now I'm going to turn it back to Rich. I want to thank you for investing your time. And Rallyware is just introducing a new way to access the kind of information that we talked about that's in our print publication in a digital format. And I'm very excited to be a part of this. And it's one of the reasons why I'm very excited to be affiliated with Rallyware and to have been a contributor to the insights shared. So Rich, if you're there, you're back on. Rich, did you unmute?
Thank you. I've been talking for the last 30 seconds to myself, John.
Okay.
You know me. You know me all too well. So thanks again, John, for sharing your team's insights and the research into those insights. But you just mentioned in one of those final slides about how the smartphone has been the game changer and being able to do that. So what John was talking about with his Ultimate Gig research project and in book format, what we've done over at Rallyware is actually to allow you to deliver that on your smartphone. And so we've had interest from companies all over, whether that be their employees or whether that be their distributors, for getting this into their hands. Maybe it's a new prospect thinking about direct selling, or maybe it's just your home office coworkers and the difference that might make in their perspective on their job. So John, you've had a lot of interaction with folks who've purchased the hard copy. What kind of results have you seen from that, or what kind of interest, I should say, have you seen from that around the industry? So this is a lightweight, a simple way to bring it to your employees, to bring it to your distributors. If you already have the Rallyware platform, it's just you know, a simple new program to add. If you don't, we've got the ability to stand that up immediately for whomever you want to have access to that. So if you are interested or know anybody else who does, just go ahead and email the address you see on your screen right now for the ultimate gig at rallyware.com. John, are you still on there, sir?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So we've got a little bit of time at the end now that I wanted to share with you a couple questions that have come across during your presentation. The first one being, what you were talking about the different labels, how we might have to label ourselves differently in the future. So do you think the term direct selling will still be out there, or do you think that we will just sort of all blend into the landscape of the gig economy, or whatever we call that moving forward?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I, you know, just throw kudos back to whoever asked that question. I don't think that the label direct selling is necessarily something that we should be concerned about. I think that our behaviors and what we ask people to do, how do we present ourselves, and what is the proposition when you look at a direct selling company? Now, when labels begin to supersede the importance of brand, I think that's when we get into a little bit of trouble. And many times we may have attempted to change the label, and quite frankly, having been an observer for many years, I'm not one to say that that works, because I was around many years ago when we called it direct selling, and then we wanted to shift to network marketing, and then social selling, and then social entrepreneurship. And I don't think the gig economy is anything other than a label being used now by the U.S. Department of Labor to indicate that there are many, many people engaged in various forms of work that are part-time, that are in independent contractor status, and they're not in employee status. So I think that when we present our opportunities, we want to re-examine or possibly rethink exactly what we're offering. Is it simple? Is it easy to understand? Is it easy to engage? Most gig opportunities don't require fees and kits, as an example. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying when you step back and begin to look and you try to identify reasons why people might be gravitating so much toward another type of work versus the type of work that we call direct selling, it may have something to do with how we are presenting ourselves and whether people perceive us to be easy to engage, easy to do, fun to do, and that the pathway to earnings is very, very clear. And I think customer acquisition is a big, big component of our future. And I think that when people understand that our products and services are great, and that they can go out and share with others what someone shared with them, and that they can really acquire customers, especially in today's world when the company is doing most of the servicing, and that is delivering the orders, and the independent contractor is gaining a benefit from that. That's amazing. And I can tell you, since we started this research, that we have met and interviewed people that have a few customers, and also people who are now becoming very good at using some of the new digital tools, especially the social tools, making sure that relationships is always first and foremost a part of the mix. But the number of customers is now moving toward, you know, 40, 50 is I think going to be, I think that's going to be the new norm. And I've actually met an individual that has a couple of thousand customers being serviced by the company, by the way, but she's reaping a benefit from that. So I think it's more about behavior and how we present who we are and what we do than it is about the label that we use. Now, that was a very long way of answering a pretty simple question, but
That's good. You address more than one question, because we had folks just asking what you thought of the label social selling, and you went into some of that along the way. Let's turn your perspective here. We've got a question in here talked about when you presented that unparalleled earning opportunity for direct sellers being a benefit. The question here is, how would you recommend that they articulate the value and better earning opportunity versus those gigs out there?
well, I don't know that we have to present better. We are better, and we need to believe that we are better, but we also need to be clear and concise. Sometimes I think that over the last 10 or 15 years, we did gravitate very much toward presenting a career opportunity. And when you look at all of the rank advancements and rank achievements that came into play, there's a lot of focus on labels and becoming this or that. I can tell you at this moment in time, and we have a lot more research to do, the individual that's participating in the gig economy is not really looking at rank or title or what you call them. They're looking at the opportunity. And I'm going to use the Uber driver simply because that's one that everybody can identify with. But they really changed the game. They put the taxi cab industry, at a real disadvantage, not out of business. Mm-hmm. But that app and that smartphone allows one to turn the app on when they're ready to go to work and turn the app off when they're ready to go home. So I think we have to become as clear as that and get more specific in simplicity and making it easy for people to understand how to engage in the business. And then the income begins to fall into place. Now, if a gig worker can earn, 300 to 1,000, that was kind of like the range that I gave you, and the average being closer to 300. Then if our proposition realistically allows people to reach believability very quickly, that they could earn 300 or 400 or 500, not to mention 1,000 or 1,500, that seems to be a realistic proposition that we could deliver on more frequently than a career proposition. So that's just food for thought, okay? That's all. We don't have solutions. This team is working on aggregating the research and putting the research back out to stimulate thinking about how we get better.
So the answer that you just gave and the example you used, turning my phone on or off as an Uber driver, it sort of addresses two other questions that have come across this afternoon. One being, so it sounds like what you're saying, so one of the questions is how, in your opinion, technology, specifically mobile tech, make an impact on direct selling. So what you're telling me, any direct seller should be able to do their business in entirety off of their phone.
Rich, I'm going to say yes to that.
Good.
Simply because we can't ignore the power of the smartphone. And even working with you and the team at Rallyware, you have helped me to understand how you can take a print publication, such as the one we put out this past June, and turn it into a digital format and bolt in a learning management system that helps the user to determine whether they're really getting what they hope to receive out of the time spent in exploring what's there. So it's an example of how you can take training, how you can take any form of information and convert it to something as small as a smartphone. Now, I can tell you, I've been around a long time, and 10 years ago, you wouldn't have convinced me so easily that this is possible.
Yep.
But now you just look at people, and when you see someone that doesn't have a smartphone, it's kind of like the unusual. And when you see someone with a smartphone looking for this or that, it's more like the norm. So I think the smartphone is the tool that we have to pay more and more attention to, because many people want it to be that simple. And if it's that simple, then it's going to be easier for people to engage, and they're going to have a lot more fun doing the work.
Well, and I would also add to that, you know, if we think of it outside of the borders of the US perspective, and, you know, you hear those humorous quotes all the time: in certain international markets, there are more smartphones per capita than there are toothbrushes, or things like that. But it's pervasive across the world. So I'm going to go back to your on again, off again Uber for one more question for you. And it probably comes back to flexibility, but I'm going to call it more intermittency, right? So I want to earn $500 just in October, November, and then I'm not going to be engaging with you again until the next October, November. How have you seen that affecting, you know, direct sellers? We're always talking about consistency and month over month. And if I don't do a certain minimum and, you know, across 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, I'm going to go inactive or lose my consultancy, that type of thing.
That's another great question, because it requires us to really think about what we are doing. And I'm going to use an example, and that example is Etsy. And for all of those that are familiar with Etsy, it's an online global mall. I happen to personally shop Etsy when I'm looking for many of the personal things, such as cufflinks and any form of jewelry. Etsy is where I go. Now, if you look at Etsy's annual report, they make it very clear that they're a seasonal business, and they don't expect you to necessarily order every month. I'm going to come back and qualify that, by the way. But they want you to remember them when birthdays come along: Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, you know, graduations or what have you. And they have their calendar all laid out as to those special moments in the year when they want their clientele to remember them. Now, many direct selling products are going to fit into that kind of description, especially if it's a home care product, not a home care, but a home decor product, or gifts or jewelry, or the many products that go into those kind of categories. Those that are working with nutritional supplements, you have built in a reason why a person probably wants to do business with you every month. I'm going to say that what we are seeing is it really doesn't make a difference when you understand the value of being able to acquire customers, retain customers, and then get customers to do business with you again and again. Now, again, doesn't have to be every month, but if they're frequent because they like you, they like the relationship they have with you, which they can't do with Amazon, by the way, but Amazon will deliver within 24, 48 hours now, and that's why our companies have to pay attention to the new benchmarks of service. But I think it depends on what kind of business you're involved in. And the important thing is you have the ability as a direct seller to build relationships like no other business model. And if your product line is one that allows you to build customers on a seasonal basis or infrequent basis, you are aggregating that effort all the time. So if you build 6 customers this month and next month it's 6 months and you're 6 more and you're retaining 50%, you're aggregating something that becomes more and more valuable. So I hope that helps, because I don't think it's important to have a product that most people are looking to order each month. There are enough people in the marketplace, whereas there are enough people needing to order something on a frequent basis that can lead to success as a direct seller.
So that's interesting. I appreciate that comment, and talking about no other gig business has the ability to build a relationship. And I was just chuckling. I don't have a relationship with any Uber driver. So you are correct in that respect. So, hey,
Yep.
we've got, I'm looking at time. We've got time for probably 2 more questions. One of them focuses upon, so that you talked about the need for direct selling to acquire customers. And the question that we got from one of the attendees was, do you think that will limit the number of people who transition from another gig opportunity, and is that bad? So that's a great comment, because, if I'm an Uber driver, they deliver that customer to me. Whereas in a lot of other experiences, gig included, I've got to go out and find those customers, right?
Yeah. Well, I was in a conversation recently, and that similar type of question came up. And the question was more related to, how do we compete, because we don't give customers to our independent contractors? And I just turned the conversation, and this is just, a personal point of view. But I said, it's not about convincing the Uber driver that they should come with us. Why don't you talk to the Uber driver about complimenting what they do without driving the car?
Yep.
So the Uber driver is constantly meeting people, and depending upon the product or service being represented, our direct selling model is perfect for an Uber driver. But we have to move beyond the thinking of trying to convince somebody else that they should come over here, versus realizing that gig workers in the future are probably going to have 2 or 3, not 1. And when those 2 or 3
John, I'm losing your audio periodically. You still there, sir?
can be complementary. And I am. Did you
Okay.
lose me?
Nope, you're fine. You're back again. So.
Okay. I think I was saying, Rich, that, when we can look at other forms of gig work in a complementary manner versus trying to convince someone that they
Yep. Sounds
should
like
come over here versus being over there.
Yeah. It sounds like you are going in and out on us with your internet connectivity there. So,
Okay.
But you're coming back in. And you talk about all the time, all those different labels. You gave probably a dozen different terms for gig economy. With what you just talked about there, the multiple gigs. When I was in a meeting over in the UK, they talk about it as the portfolio economy. So I think that's right? We'll have multiple ways that we can earn extra income, no matter what it's called.
Agreed.
So John, thank you again so much for your time today. I appreciate you taking the time out, you sharing all of the hard work you've done, and I look forward to continuing to learn from you and your research opportunities. So just as a reminder to any of you who are interested in that electronic format, how the smartphone can serve it up, just email your inquiry to ultimategig@rallyware.com. And John, any parting words for our audience?
Best wishes to everyone for much success in 2020.
Thanks so much again. And from Rallyware, we will be back with you with a brand
And
new...
it's just great to be in another.
Thanks, John. And
thank you.
all right. Have a good afternoon. everyone, and we will be back to you in the month of February with more from our webinar series. Have a great day. Take care.